Hi everyone. I'm recording this presentation to complement my presentation at VIATEC's Prompt AI conference. So hopefully you saw it there, and if not, I hope you enjoy it, seeing it for the first time. Um, Today we're going to get into writing authentically in your own voice with AI. So without further ado, let's jump in. So I won't get too much into my own background, but I did have the funny realization recently that I'm about 5 weeks away from being 25 years as a full-time digital marketer, which is kind of scary and terrifying. Means I'm getting a little bit older these days, but yeah, that's what it is. So anyhow, I've been working, launched Plus ROI online marketing and working in that for the last 18 years, launched What Works Marketing 2022. And probably the thing I'm proudest of is that for 9 of the 10 years that the program's been in place, we've been a Google Premier Partner, which is what Google refers to as the designation for their top 3% of agencies doing Google search advertising. So with our small team on the island, I'm really proud of that, given most of the other premium partners are large agencies in bigger cities. So yeah, hats off to my team on that. Super proud of that. Uh, I'll touch a little bit on my own writing and AI journey, just for some perspective, and go back like a little over 2 years ago. I was absolutely a crusty cynic, not wanting to learn a new technology at this point, kind of like, oh, I just can't really be bothered with this, and AI can't write better than a human anyhow. It's not going to be authentic. It's just not going to work. So long story short, I ended up having a breakthrough. I had a bit of a process where I was using it to kind of like help do outlines and edit stuff. And then I tried a method of basically training it a little bit and then giving it my own insights. In short, when I used to do a blog post, for instance, I'd sit down, I'd have a thought going around my mind about a point I wanted to make or something I wanted to prove or a client challenge that I wanted to address. I'd sit down, write an outline about that, and then spend about 2 hours writing a blog post. Um, what I got through to was the point of being able with AI to basically train it in how I write, and now I can just sit down, write down that outline and that thesis or thing that I want to prove, and then have AI write it for me, along with, of course, other input. I'll give it the examples I want to cite, insights, and yeah, long story short, what used to take a couple hours now takes about 10 minutes. So yeah, you can say that I'm sold. And that was what also made me realize that we absolutely had to get out in front of this as an agency and me as an individual, because it's going to dramatically change everything about digital marketing, possibly with the exception of it being really important to have a smart strategy to start with. But as far as execution goes, oh, I can't even imagine the changes that are going to come down in the next couple of years. Outside of the writing, one thing about AI is it has enabled us to do tasks that were almost human impossible in the past. And there's a couple I'll refer to. Early when we launched our AI search optimization services, we started working on with a couple of enterprise level sites. And long story short, one site that had 1,200 blog posts and another news site that had 1,400 articles done through the WordPress platform. So they were in categories and tagged and in that sort of structure. In both those cases, we used AI to help recategorize all those posts and articles. So recategorize them, assign new sort of categories, tags, draft new meta page titles, new meta page descriptions, and do it in a coherent manner that made sense and was organized for, in one case, 1,200, in the other case, 1,400 pages. And that took, each one took about 2 days, but previously would have taken a couple months. And I really don't believe that a human can wrap their mind around that much information at one time to be able to do a good job of that. And this actually did a great job of it with our best practices employed and entered and trained in the environment we're using. And one big thing for me about getting excited about AI And I don't know, part of me isn't that excited because I don't actually know that it's going to be a good thing for us all. But that said, after being almost 25 years in tech, but not being a developer, you feel kind of inferior. You're not writing code, you're not doing these very cool technical things. But one thing that's really empowering about AI for us non-developer types is that it's becoming much more important to describe your goals and what the outcomes and output you want are. Much more important in many cases than being able to code something is being able to describe those things. So I happen to be a pretty good writer and communicator. Well, some might argue, but I'm going to say that that's true. And so now all of a sudden I'm able to do things that I was never able to do before in terms of like creating apps, crafting solutions, internal workflows, just all kinds of stuff I could never touch with code. So it is kind of a really empowering moment for folks that maybe aren't as technical uh, as you needed to be in the past. So spent way too long on that, but I'll just touch on why authentic and unique writing matters. So first off, there's a lot of good tools out there with AI now, and everybody has access to AI. So bottom line, when everybody's using the same tools and writing good content, what's going to set you apart? The other thing that's kind of a real pet peeve, well, which has been for years with sort of content farms and that sort of thing, but bottom line is writing mediocre content more quickly and at scale doesn't help anybody. It just pollutes the internet, doesn't add anything. So the idea of creating original thought and putting it out there in this personal authentic communication, it really gives you an opportunity to build differentiation and thought leadership, which that's an area I'm really passionate about and have loved to chat some time about thought leadership. But yeah, huge differentiation. It creates trust. If you're providing authentic, original information and educating people and giving them new perspectives, helps build trust. And then lastly, there's the whole discovery thing. Um, so there's a lot of debate about whether Google and even AI will index AI generated content. In truth, it's not whether AI is in it or not, it's whether there's original content or not. So one thing I will say though about if you're just using AI without your own original ideas, you're not generating anything new. You are unlikely to get indexed, but SEO and even more so, ask engine optimization or AI search optimization or whatever you want to call it, absolutely loves authentic original content by verifiable human beings. So big opportunity there as well to, by being authentic and original, huge opportunity to show up more prominently in all kinds of searches. So there is, of course, a misconception again that AI means you're kind of losing your voice. You're just sounding, um, like everybody else. You're not speaking in your own authentic voice, and that is true. If you just go to ChatGPT and tell it to write something, it's going to write it like ChatGPT, or maybe it'll have learned a little bit about you. But that said, there are opportunities to train AI properly on your voice and style, which is what we're going to dig into. And once you cross that threshold, AI keeps your voice and can write in your voice. It just is simply accelerating your ideas and your productivity. So getting into the important stuff you came for here, there's multiple levels of content that you can create with AI. First off, there's kind of the basic prompting that I referred to, and we're going to look at examples of these in a sec, so I won't belabor them. As a level up from that, there's prompting, but providing context, which is better. And then there's these trained environments that we're going to look at. And these trained environments are basically like custom GPTs or Gemini gems or Claude projects where you put all the training in there about how you write and what you do. They've got lots of other functions too, but those are the trained environments that we want to get to. And I will share too, don't worry too much about the specific tool right now, but focus on the principles of this and the strategies, because the tools change all the time, but you want to focus on the principles. So with that said, kind of a quick sip of coffee here. The first type of most basic prompting would be like zero-shot prompting, where you're just typing something in. So in this case, I might type in, please write a post on landscaping for my Facebook page. And you're giving it no training, no context. You'll probably get something, ChatGPT or whatever you're using would probably pop something out that would be all right, uh, but it wouldn't be relevant to your audience. It wouldn't be original, and it wouldn't be particularly good. So that's what the most basic form is. Sort of the next step up is prompting with context and maybe some insight. And so in this case, go to ChatGPT and maybe type in, I run a small landscaping company, writing for an audience of retired homeowners who need landscaping help but do some work themselves. Please write a blog post for me that discusses the need for deep watering to develop healthy, deeply rooted lawns, especially in shady areas referencing the uplands and Broadmead neighborhoods. So this is an example where there is some really good context there. It's giving the tool some information on who you're writing for. It's telling it about where you're at, and it's telling the tool what to write. So the need for the deep watering, and it's highly relevant to those neighborhoods. So this is actually going to be some original content that is unique to you and does offer some value. It'll be pretty good, but won't be perfect. So the next step, and I know this is overwhelming, there's a fair bit to this, but the trained environment. So again, it's custom GPTs that you can create in ChatGPT, projects that you create in Claude, or gems that you create in Gemini. We'll look at those further, but essentially the same thing. So in there, I might, yeah, you know what? I won't get deep into this, but in this case, I'll often even write in and ask Claude, in my case, which is what I use, what its thoughts are on my idea as a LinkedIn post. It'll sometimes have some pretty good suggestions, and I'll add that, and then add the suggestions and come up with a great sort of take on it. But the really important thing is all the context, like the audience stuff that I mentioned, the background of my business, that's all in the instructions. Can also tell the instructions to ask some clarifying questions if you're not giving it enough information. And then lastly, you're giving it some of your own original perspective on it that will help make it your own. And so that's in my example there, where I talk about writing a post about generative AI, whether it's an industry buzzword or whether it's actual game changer. I mentioned I'd like to share the parallels between AI and SEO, social media and content marketing, all of which were legitimate channels, but where there were unstrategic, opportunistic marketers involved. And anyhow, I won't belabor that point. But going through this process, actually came up with a pretty good post that got some great engagement in that case, and I was proud to publish as mine, because it is mine. And actually, if you go to my LinkedIn, you can see it, and it's also referenced in some training materials that we're going to provide today. So yeah, so getting to picking your tool, often it's about what you're using in your workplace, but essentially the first one I used was with ChatGPT, the custom GPTs, really nice workflow. And essentially, again, we'll look at these deeper in a moment, but it's basically personal preference by whether, are your colleagues and coworkers using ChatGPT? Do you happen to like Claude? Are you using Google Workspace? And maybe in that case, gems through Gemini are a good way to go. But yeah, figuring out what's going to work for you in terms of workflow and integrations is great. But yeah, I mean, the Gemini and the gems are awesome if you're already using Workspace. There's some really good integrations with Google Drive and Google Docs, with Gmail even makes life really easy on that front. I really like the ChatGPT's custom GPTs just because they're really shareable. Once you've created one, you can let anybody use it, and you can also keep the instructions private. Claude is funny because it actually has at least in the regular pro versions, if you're not going to the teams, which is quite an investment. If you're not going to the teams, the workflow is probably the most limiting. But oddly enough, I've had the best results in Claude using for my somewhat technical writing, and I really like its research function better than the other ones. That said, we do jump around all the time, and even as we speak, this last week we've been doing a big implementation for a client uh, in Gemini to help accelerate their writing process, and it's working really well. So there's also a question of there are platform solutions. Like if don't know if folks are familiar with Jasper or Copy.ai. They have really great ease of use, and they really create a content creation workflow, a writing workflow that allows you to apply company branding across everybody who writes within the company. They're super efficient. And essentially, though, what they are is a fantastic user interface that's been applied over top of these LLMs like ChatGPT, or I don't know which LLM or who they use, but essentially most of the tools that are out there, most of the AI tools that are specialty niche tools, they're leveraging the base technology of these major platforms, but then just giving that really good UI. And in this case, if workflow and brand consistency and ease of use are top priorities in your organization, I'd say absolutely. They might be the best solution. In my case, I was really curious to develop some mastery internally to learn and understand how these things work. So essentially, with using the gems and projects and custom GPTs, you have to learn a little bit more. Definitely a bit harder to use. Still very, very accessible. So I wouldn't worry that it's going to be too hard. The other thing is cost. I had to look at what it would cost for our entire team to be on Jasper, and it's like, oh my gosh, we can invest a lot of time working on our own internal tools that will work exactly as we want them to, based on what it would cost to subscribe. And that's really the thing too, the fine tuning. If there's something that you don't like about a voice or the way it's working, really easy to change if you're using the custom tools like we're talking about today. So diving right in, there's a lot going on here. Um, this is just a screenshot from my Claude, my Rob the Writer Claude project that I actually use. And so what you're seeing here, there's basically over on the right, you can see there's a bunch of files. What those files are is those are writing samples that I uploaded so that I could refer to them in the instructions to use as samples of how I write. So uploaded a bunch of those. Then there's the project instructions. So you can see where it starts to talk about the voice and writing guidelines. You'll notice, you might chuckle, you notice in there that I tell it to never use M dashes, which sometimes you have to reinforce and find an even clearer way of saying that, as if there is one, but you sometimes have to prod it a bit. But essentially, yeah, in the instructions, you tell Claude exactly how you want to write, what your writing style is, you give it samples of your work, and then you basically just go to it and have chats with that project. And as you can see on the left there, all the chats are saved within the project. So you can go back to them, keep working on them. They're all organized together. But these are just so powerful. And the other thing that's really awesome too, that applies to all these tools, by the way, not just projects, but if there's something that you don't like about the writing output, you basically go and fix that in the instructions rather than the chat. You fix that in the instructions, and then it'll never happen again, or at least should never happen again. And if it does, kind of go back to it and figure out what to do. And it's funny too, when there's something happening that you don't like, uh, rather than overtaxing my small brain and trying to figure out the exact way to refer to it to give the exact instructions so that Claude will not do that again, I just say, hey, Claude, I didn't like this sentence because of blank, blank, and blank. How can I change my instructions in order that you never do this again? And then Claude will actually tell me what to add to my instructions. it's a pretty cool and mind-blowing process, really. So again, you'll see here we've got this is a screenshot of a blank Gemini gem. And so again, you can see there's the name, you put the name in, give a description if you like. There's the room for instructions. And then down below, instead of files, they call it knowledge. And that's where you can upload files to reference from your instructions. So again, virtually the same thing. There's a few differences in how they get shared, but really the same if you're creating it for yourself. And then here's the Chat GPT, custom GPTs. Again, same thing. You'll see on the side, there's a name, description, there's your instructions. Chat GPT also allows you to have conversation starters, which are questions that are options that somebody can just click on to start a session. And then down below, there's knowledge. Again, knowledge where you upload the files for anything you want to refer to. So ChatGPTs is a little bit more complex, but again, they're still ridiculously easy to use, and you don't need to do anything too advanced in there. You can start where you're at and then just grow with it over time. So yeah, so talking about this a little bit, we're making good time here without any audience questions as I record here in my home office. But so in building your training environment, we've actually created some resources to help you do that. So there's a couple of templates for download. One is very basic. I didn't want to overwhelm folks with the more advanced one. So there's a basic one and there's an advanced one. The advanced template is based on what I created for myself. It's kind of been anonymized. And with that said, why don't I just call those up and show you what we've got going on there. Oops. There we go. So yes, several PDF files. There's a how to use PDF that describes exactly what to do, picking a template, working through it. Towards the end, I give a couple examples even. And there's a lot of information here, but this is actually very simple. And then, yeah, I give a little bit of the secret sauce around my process of creating my own original content and kind of how that works. And then, yeah, the simple template, pretty straightforward here. Basically, you use these instructions below, and there's your writing voice. You describe how you write in terms of tone, your tone, what that looks like. It's typical sentence structure. In my case, I virtually always use short sentences and short paragraphs to be readable on the web. And then again, you talk about whether you use humor, your personality traits, and I don't need to read all these out. You'll have them to download, but yeah, and then you can tell it to ask you a few things before you even start writing. And then the more advanced one, it's basically just more of the same. It's just more in depth. And the more ambitious you are on filling these out, the better the quality of your writing is going to be that AI is producing. And the great thing is, of course, as I mentioned, if it comes out not quite right, as long as you can explain why it's not quite right, you can address it and fix it. So yeah, again, I won't go into too many details, but I will share, I think my own writing instructions are something like 9 pages long right now. We were working again on a client one this week that I believe was not nearly as long as mine yet, but even the starter one was 1,800 words for the first team member that we did their writing instructions. We interviewed them to get all their information. Their writing instructions were something like 1,800 words long. And then we had the company style guide that we uploaded as information, and then a bunch of samples. So you can imagine, basically, if you're willing to take the bit of time up front to set it up, absolutely accessible. This can absolutely work for anyone. And the question does come up, well, what if I don't have writing samples? What if I haven't written a lot? In that case, I mean, you have to be careful, but you can describe the kind of writing that you like. And more to the point, after working back and forth with your voice in AI, when you get to a point where you create some posts or some letters or whatever it is you're working, when you create some work that you do like, you can upload those as samples to reinforce what it is that you're liking, or sorry, that you want to rate like. So with that said, we are ready for, well, were we in person, we'd be ready for some questions. So in the meantime, oh shoot, I can see I'm going to have to turn off my image there for a sec. So in the meantime, on the left there, that QR code will take you to the link where you can download the presentation. You'll have access to the presentation as well as the prompt instructions and prompt and instruction templates. And then on the right is my LinkedIn. So if you'd like to connect on LinkedIn, please feel free to reach out. Love connecting. Feel free to ask questions on LinkedIn if there's questions that we don't get to today. And with that said, yeah, let's talk about some of the questions that have been submitted already. A lot of folks have been asking about whether AI makes errors, and the answer is absolutely. I would throw out the caveat that humans make errors as well. So if you had somebody helping with your writing, you would absolutely proof what they had put together for you if they'd done stuff. And the again, the cool thing about these trained environments like the projects and the gems and the GPTs is that you can, when you see an error, you can remove it to make sure it never happens again. So for instance, we were writing for a client, creating a tool for a client for their writing, and it referred to them as a position that they hadn't been, which seemed crazy. And I think they referred to them as a CEO when they'd been like a president of an organization, but not a CEO. So we basically entered a line in the instructions to only refer to positions that it was positive that people had had, and not to consider those synonymous. And so that never happened again. A lot of questions come up about whether AI will make your content sound like everybody else's. And well, I think we've covered that really in the presentation. The answer is it absolutely will, unless you take steps to make sure that it doesn't do that. Another question that folks put out there when last I presented this was how much writing do you need to feed in terms of samples before it gets me? And in that case, that's a little bit more subjective. A little bit more subjective on that. But I would say if you are a writer and have work that you like, or even if you just write some paragraphs that you like, I would say maybe a half dozen pieces. In my own case, I think I've got more like a dozen, but I also have different formats. So actually, that's a good point that I don't think we covered, is rather than just uploading samples, you can upload samples of different things. So if you draft annual reports, you can upload an annual report. If you do RFPs, you can upload an RFP. If you do blog posts versus LinkedIn posts versus whatever the heck you do, you can upload those, have it clear in the headings in the document what they're samples of. And then of course, in your instructions, you do have to refer to those samples to point the tool to those samples. Questions about whether it's unethical and whether you should disclose AI use. And my answer is it really depends on your industry and what your function there is. I mean, in my case, I don't, I mean, I happily disclose that I leverage AI, but AI is not creating my ideas. So I don't feel like I need to add to every post or piece that AI is involved. Again, it depends. That said, if you're a reporter, and actually that's an interesting one because we got asked about doing some consulting with a news outlet, fairly prominent TV station, and their stories can't be more than a certain percentage of AI written. They've actually set a specific percentage, which speaks to the challenges here, because I don't know, in my case, I don't know how I would even do that in that I'm putting my own information in, leveraging my own styles, and then having AI output it? Is that 90% AI? Is that 10% AI? I have no idea. I think it's pretty impossible to measure actually, but unless you literally do have some paragraphs with AI and some not. Um, Sort of a question that comes up too is like, well, with the work of setting up a custom GPT or a project, how long does that take compared to just like writing the pieces myself? And I guess my answer, particularly after helping with some client setups recently myself, um, it'll take you an hour to get started. To make it perfect, it might take you a day, but that's just chipping away, maybe a day's worth of time, 8 hours worth of time. But at that point, you then have a tool that can help you write between 4 times and 10 times faster. So I know in my case, it's actually made it possible for me to be blogging and posting again, which I've gotten so busy that it just wasn't. Yeah. Then another good question came up that I did address is and I had a very humorous exchange with somebody who I'm not going to share here, but you can ask me about it personally. But what if you write for completely different niches or different clients and need different styles? And it's like, well, that's where uh, just using ChatGPT will fail because it has memory of your conversations. And I know you can turn it off, on and off, but that will quickly become unmanageable. That's where these custom GPTs or projects or gems just shine, because in that case, you just create a different tool or a different custom environment for each of your different niches or voices or clients. Really couldn't be more straightforward. And lastly, kind of the last question we had up was about whether you can use these in privacy sensitive environments. And I would say absolutely check in on that. I would share that I would not personally create any documents that were just for private use. Using AI necessarily. If there was proprietary company information that you don't want to get out, I would say at this point don't use it in any of the tools that I just mentioned, because the one thing is they have different privacy restrictions, and I think Google says that it won't train on this information, and I could have that backwards, so don't hold me on that. But um, the bottom line is, even if you tell it not to use the information, that doesn't mean that the LLM is not going to learn from it. So if we had sort of the best and only way of doing a certain thing within a marketing agency, there's probably no way I would want to share that with any of these tools, because then it will be able to apply that logic to everybody else in the future. Um, so yeah, so anyhow, I think that's about it for today. Again, I'll shut off my camera to clear off that LinkedIn thing. I would love any feedback through LinkedIn, or if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out. I hope you enjoy the downloads, and we'll see you on another session. Thank you.